This is The Shift, Stories of Resistance and Resilience, a multi-platform conversation series produced and hosted by Mark Travis Rivera, the professional storyteller. I believe that we must embrace the power of stories to create a more inclusive world. So this series aims to share perspectives, insights, and stories from professionals around the world about the role that resistance and resilience plays in our personal and professional lives. So, tune in, listen up, take notes, and recognize our shared humanity. This is The Shift. Hey y'all, welcome to The Shift, stories of resistance and resilience. My name is Mark Travis Rivera, and I am the CEO and founder of The Professional Storyteller, where I embrace the power of stories to create a more inclusive world. I originally started this series as a LinkedIn audio series in 2023 when I went full-time creative entrepreneur, and I am so excited to be continuing the shift, but doing it in a multi-platform way. So we allow ourselves to have live conversations 3 times a month. And every week we're redistributing these conversations across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and YouTube. And I'm super excited to have today's conversation to kick off Women's History Month with one of my dear friends and colleagues, Sarah Phelps. And before I read her official bio, I also wanted to share that I have, I have launched my short-term coaching program called the POP Sessions. And POP is an acronym that says, that says, that stands for, uh, power of purpose. And a lot of folks were asking me to develop a short-term coaching program that would allow folks to come with me with one problem and work with me over a course of 3 weeks in these shorter sessions. So you'll receive 30-minute sessions over the course of 3 weeks where we will address the main issue or the one issue that is stopping you from embracing the power of your purpose. And so if you're interested in being part of the pilot cohort starting in quarter 2, the fee for the pilot is $150, which is a reduction of what the normal price will be moving forward. And so I am looking for at least 10 participants to be a part of the pilot program. So if you are interested in being part of the POP Sessions pilot program, I will add the link to the intake form in the show notes and on LinkedIn and etc. So I just want to share that announcement with everyone now. For those of you who may not know me, I am a creative entrepreneur, I am a professional storyteller, and I am based in Atlanta, Georgia, but I am a Jersey boy by roots. I'm Puerto Rican, I'm queer, I'm disabled, I'm gender nonconforming, and I am an artist first and foremost, and I am someone who uses art and storytelling to try to make the world a better place. And I'm super excited to be joined today again by my dear colleague and friend. I first met this amazing human in, I believe, 2021. And she had reached out to me to co-produce this series of conversations for LinkedIn. And we did. And I thought, wow, this person's dope. And also, she very much works like me. Like, she's very organized. We have that in common. We're very type A. We're very, like, structured. And so it was nice to work with someone who was just as on top of it as I am. And I'm going to introduce her today because she's our guest on The Shift. Today's guest, as an advocate, speaker, and community educator, Sarah Phelps brings a unique approach to understanding and belonging for marginalized communities. She helps organizations combine principles of well-being, justice, and innovation in program development, training and facilitation, and leadership coaching. With degrees in history and international relations and over 20 years of nonprofit and corporate experience, she has a strategic and creative approach to programming and thought leadership. She centers community, care, and universal thriving in her work and is passionate about helping all people gain understanding and empowerment. Sarah is adept at empathetic and agile adaptation of messages to her audiences. She has spoken at a wide variety of venues such as police departments, diversity conferences, social service providers, annual stakeholder meetings, and executive roundtables. She's also a diversity conference planner, founder of the Emerging Speakers Institute, facilitator for inclusive communities. She is honored to serve as the board president of Umbrella US, providing resources and coaching for neurodivergent adults nationwide. In her free time, which she doesn't have much of, Sarah Gardens enjoys great design and reads voraciously. I was like, I know that word. She reads approximately 150 plus books per year and 5 to 9 newspapers per day. And she is my guest on the shift. Welcome, Sarah Phelps. How you doing, friend?
Oh, I am good. You see the orange makeup? It's
Yes, I
all
love
energy today.
Yes, I love a pop of color. Today we're slowly in that weird like fall, winter into spring phase here in Atlanta. And so it's really sunny and it's not that cold, but it's not super hot either. So I was like, let me do one more fall look before I have to go full spring in a few weeks. Sarah, I deeply adore you and thank you for accepting my invite to be a guest on the shift. I read your professional highlights and I read some of your personal hobbies, but I want to ask you, and I ask this of every guest, who are you outside of the professional highlights I read in your bio?
I will never not be that farm girl. I grew
Mm,
up on a farm in Iowa, and my parents really instilled in me the desire to be global in my aspect,
mm,
which is surprising because they are actually the greatest generation era. So, I went to college and I made my own major in Asian history, and I went to India and I went to China, and that's who I am. I'm an adventurer by heart. Um, and I genuinely care about other people. I find that every single human being I've ever met has something really unique and cool and special about them.
mm,
And I often think, what if somebody else was paying attention and then somebody else was paying attention? What could we do to
yeah,
make people feel good about themselves and, just be amazing? So
yeah,
I guess that's who I am outside.
yeah. And you do that so well, friend. I can't tell you how many people reach out to me on LinkedIn saying, Sarah Phelps recommended that I reach out to you, or Sarah Phelps says I had to know you, or Sarah Phelps says that I had to meet you and connect with you. And I always say there would be no me without the we. The we is the people in my life who speak my name in rooms I may never be able to enter, or wouldn't be able to enter without them naming me. And so I never take that for granted. You know that I love you dearly, and when we talked about you being a guest to kick off Women's History Month, to me it was a no brainer because I knew who was coming before you and some of the topics we were covering, and so I was really getting excited to dive deeper into it and get your perspective. And every guest answers this question as well, which is the second question, which is what is your personal concept of resistance and resilience, especially given the times we're in right now?
I gotta tell you, I'm really resilient and I hate that I am.
Mm,
I understand that resilience is a response to trauma throughout my life. As great as my parents were, they weren't always great.
mm,
I've taken a lot of physical and mental abuse in my life. I exist as a fat person, so people say things to me every single day that are kind of awful. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to be resilient? I feel like it's just a callus, kind of an emotional callus that allows me to keep going. Um, and maybe right now it's helping the resistance. I know it sounds very Pollyanna ish, but I really live in a hope place. Um, I've worked very hard to understand how my brain works, and I'm not sad to admit that I suffer from extremely severe depression. And the work I've done to make myself a positive person, I'm not going to let it go.
yeah,
I am certain that the communities we're a part of, the communities I work with, BIPOC communities, queer communities, neurodivergent communities, we really will overcome. It's
yeah,
yeah, it sucks right now, and it her it's unbelievably horrible how much danger people are in and how much stress they're feeling. and how people are going back in the closet and masking. My resistance is that I don't have a lot of risk. I'm a white woman. A lot of my diversities you can't see, you don't know. Um, there's not a lot of risk to me, so I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it on the chin, um,
And I want to,
maybe to make space for other people.
yeah, and I want to pause there because so many people talk about allyship and being an accomplice, and and I have met, and this leads into the next question, which I don't want to get to just yet, but I want to pause there for a second because you said a couple of things I think are really important. You said I work every day towards being optimistic and hopeful, and that you suffer from depression. And as someone who also suffers from depression, and as someone whose natural disposition is melancholy and is sadness, um, which people actually get surprised when I say that to them because they're like, "You're such a light. You're so positive. You do such amazing work." And I'm just like, "Yeah, but all that takes a lot of effort and energy. It takes.
Mm,
I've been in therapy for over a decade, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen like like it is something I'm constantly working on to like love myself and to keep going and and I really appreciate you sharing that because I don't think we talk enough about the amount of effort it takes to be hopeful, especially at a time like now. And for me, hope is a tool of resistance. Joy and laughter and dance are tools of resistance. And I really appreciate you saying that. And I always appreciate this about you, but especially right now, you naming that you are in a position where you're not as in risk as other folks that you know and care about, right? And that you can take it on the chin in some ways, right? But I know more about your life, and I know there are things that you are disproportionately impacted by, right? And your ability to recognize that you are disproportionately impacted in some ways, but still privileged in other ways, is all I think anyone wants people to recognize. I recognize my privilege. I am educated. I have my own company. I've been able to travel the world. I've been able to meet some amazing people, right? I have the ability to read and write, right? And that positionality, right, of my privilege and my platform, it doesn't dissolve me of discrimination in the areas where I'm marginalized, but it makes my lived experience very different. For instance, while many people put me in the trans umbrella as a gender nonconforming cisgender man, right? I recognize that I'm privileged in that I don't have to navigate the medical industrial complex as a gender nonconforming person who does not desire to do hormone replacement therapy or gender affirming care in any way, right? But I also still get harassed when I go into the men's restroom, right? And so there's duality, there's nuance to these things, right? But me saying that I am privileged because I don't have to navigate the healthcare system or the bans that are happening around the country right now around trans health access to gender affirming care. That's a privilege, right? I'm not battling body dysmorphia because of my gender identity, right? And we'll talk about body dysmorphia and body image in a second. But I want to, today is March 11th and it's the first shift of the month. And it is also Women's History Month. And while we are witnessing a rolling back of rights for women and other marginalized communities, what do you want women, especially women who voted in support of the current administration, to remember?
I want you to remember that in the United States, you're the majority.
Hmm.
There are more women voters registered. There are more women, full stop, in the United States. And I want you to think really hard about the message you're being given and whether or not it feels like a lie in your gut. Um, you
Hmm.
know, white women are being given a different message than BIPOC women. They're being fed a different story. The story of we're going to love you, protect you, put you on the pedestal. BIPOC women are being told we like you where you are, underpaid, underemployed, that kind of thing. Even though I think the statistic is there's just as many black women getting degrees as white women, and more black women than white men
Mm,
getting degrees.
yeah.
It if it's about education and talent, that's one thing, but
Well, that's
um,
what I think is so interesting about this idea around being a DEI hire or, you know, affirmative action, which, by the way, benefited white women disproportionately over the last several decades, right? And there are more white women in the C-suite levels than any other race of women in our country. Um, and the pay disparity is not the same for a white woman versus a woman of color, right? Who tends to make less per dollar than a white man. And so what I don't understand, Sarah, and this is why I'm asking you these questions, is why do you think this current administration, this current moment we're in, that women, even some Democratic leaning women, if I'm being honest, are turning their backs on other women and voting against their own interests in disproportionate ways? Like I thought the overturning of Roe versus Wade was the nail in the coffin for Trump. I thought there's no way white women are going to vote for him at the same way they voted for him initially, because now they're being impacted by lack of access to reproductive health care. And that isn't what the data showed us.
I mean, I have two answers. The first one is that fear plus complacency plus privilege
Mm,
equals an ability to at least feign apathy. It is a lot easier to let things happen around you than it is to actually fight back and think. Um, that's one thing. And, you know, um, the other thing is, you're right about white women not having a sense of history. We just were able to get, all of us were just able to get credit cards when I was born in the 70s. I mean, it's not been that long ago. Everyone's mom remembers that,
yeah,
but you don't. That's why you see a lot of women my age voting Dem, and then younger and older women voting the other way.
yeah,
We don't have a sense of history in this country, and we don't have a sense of the immediacy of history. The funny thing is that white women don't know that they are counted in DEI numbers.
yeah,
When you report ratios of gender in your business, white women are part of that ratio. You are a DEI number.
yeah.
That should tell you
Metric,
everything you need to know.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, they benefited the most from affirmative action, right? Like when you think about, and this is true, I think, of the suffragist movement, right? That white women were fighting for their rights and feminism, but it didn't include all women, right? And there are some feminists now who don't want to include trans women in that narrative, right? And so I find that we are living in a very reductive time where it's like, well, they're not really women, or they can't have children, so they're not really women, or it's not all about race, it's about gender, right? And there's like this one or the other kind of situation. And it's very Krabs and environmentality, which is how patriarchy and white supremacy continue to thrive for hundreds of years. And, it's an evil system. But the genius of the system was that it tricked oppressed people into thinking that because they were less oppressed than the next person, that they were better than them. And white women have been complacent, to your point, of being second in line. That they rather have access to some power and some privilege and some dominance over others than dismantle a system that, while it does not benefit them in the same way it benefits white men, it still benefits them more than other folks of color and other people.
I
I
think a
wonder.
good like micro. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
No,
love.
no, go ahead, honey.
I think a good microcosm of that is the whole Riley Gaines thing, the
Mm,
swimmer.
I'm not familiar with that story.
She was in a race, a swimming race, and a transgender swimmer beat her. And she has made an entire career out of being mad about it. But the reality is, she's not good at swimming. She would have gotten last no matter what. Um, and the funny thing is that the thing she's most angry about isn't that she got last, it's that she was beaten by somebody she doesn't respect. If she
Mm,
had gotten second to last and beaten the transgender swimmer, I'm sure she would be fine.
mm,
So, to your point, second is still above somebody.
mm-hmm.
We live in this ridiculously individualist capitalist society where the win is more important than anything else. We are highly teleological here. We are all about the goal.
Yeah,
Um, and then the artists, the thinkers, the vanguard, the educators, uh, they're deontological, so they're about the experience, the journey,
yeah,
living an actual life and not winning. um, and that's where you see that huge dichotomy,
yeah.
it's way better to get second than last.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I say this often to my fellow friends of color. I said, of all the things that white supremacy um, robbed us of, I think it was our innate communal way of living before colonization. And many of us have like pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. And the thing is, well, what if I don't have a boot to pull up a bootstrap with? You know what I'm saying? Like, what if there are no boots? Or what if I have
What if
boots
you
that
have
don't
no
bring.
arms?
Right,
I mean,
right, right. What if your limb
the
different? What if
possibilities
you
are endless.
right? Like, what if you have a pair of boots but no shoestrings to pull up from? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is that saying? And so, or what if the boots are a size too small, or too many sizes too big? Right? And there's all these things that people just want to say, like, oh, well, the person just did X, Y, Z. Okay, but if you actually look at it systemically, if we actually did the work of social services in a way that address the systemic issues that so many people face in this country, we would live in a better world. And what is so sad, right? And I have to share this experience with folks more publicly. I haven't really talked much about it out of reverence to the organization's mission. Um, and I'm not triggered by this anymore, so I can talk about it without sounding bitter now. I couldn't do that a few years ago. Um, I had some less than ideal situations with white women in the workplace. And it wasn't just white women, right? I've had poor experiences with women of color as well. But in this particular case, white women in the workplace, it was so bad, Sarah, that it forced me to quit the highest paying job I had at the time in just a few months. Excuse me, in just a few months. And then I meet white women like yourself, and I'm reminded that just like hate and intolerance can be taught, folks can be taught to acknowledge their white privilege and positionality to power without it having to be a process that dehumanizes them or diminishes their own suffering. Why do you think white women have not been resisting this current rolling back of their rights with the same fervor as black and brown women have? That the same fervor that black and brown women have been doing so.
Because white women are desperate. There's no immediate danger, right? By the time white women as a whole, and let's remind everyone this is not a blanket statement, but
Right.
as a group, by the time white women realize the danger, the risk, they A, will have no allies left, and B, it will be too late. Um,
Oh, that just gave
right
me.
now,
Let's pause there for a second. Let's unpack that because that was. Say more about the desperate part. What are they
say,
desperate for? What are they desperate for? Tell me more about the desperation part.
for black and brown women, and please understand, I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth or pretend that's me.
Mm-hmm.
My feeling is that they see an immediacy of the risk. It is very clear that this, on top of the marginalization that already exists, is going to put them in a place where they can't feed their families, where their communities are ripped apart even more, where their gay children are going to be, put in a camp or deported or, For my brown friends, honestly, people are keeping their head down. They're stressed because of deportation.
Mm,
In Nebraska, where I live, there have been some ICE raids, and they were brutal. Um, there's no immediacy, there's no desperation for white women because what
mm,
has actually changed right at this moment for white women? Abortion care is harder to get, but if you are a privileged person, it will never be hard to get. You'll always have an option. Other than that, you tell me what's really different for white women at this moment.
wow. Oh, that just gave me chills, goosebumps. This episode's gonna piss off some people, but it's okay. Uh, it's interesting because of all the cuts he's doing to the federal government, this administration, and their attempts to stop social security and SNAP benefits and all these other subsidies and support systems. The majority of people who are using these services are people in rural or red states and primarily white women. And what I cannot understand is how low income folks have convinced themselves that a man who has been wealthy his entire life, a man who could squander millions of dollars in failed businesses and lawsuits, a man who wouldn't even look at them if they were in need, right? A man who doesn't even know what the groceries experience really cost, right? Somehow they have convinced themselves that he's blue collar, that he's one of them, that somehow, even though he's wealthy, he's one of them.
It's
And
the
I,
epitome of patriarchy, right?
yes,
Daddy's going to take care of me.
right. And in my mind, it's like, I think there is a level of, he's not really like me, but because I'm white, he's not going to do anything to hurt me. And now we're seeing videos of these Trump supporters and Trump voters. There's a difference between, I think, a Trump voter and a Trump supporter, right? A Trump voter is someone who voted for Trump despite not liking his stance on certain issues because for them the economy was the most important. And then there are supporters and MAGA folks who voted for him knowing and approving of all his social stances and all these his plans, right? And suddenly it wasn't until they start losing their jobs and their benefits and saw the price of their living going up that they realized, oh, wait a minute, I voted for him. Why did he deport my wife? Why is he doing this to us? Why is he, why are we getting impacted by this? Right?
Ranchers in Nebraska are realizing that they will have no workforce soon
Yeah.
and are lamenting the fact that, they may go out of business.
Yeah.
Um, and you hear a lot of people saying, I didn't think this was how it was going to go. And I was like, well,
Meanwhile, black women,
everybody else did.
everyone else was telling y'all,
Yeah.
right?
But,
It's
but
because
that's the big failure.
they have the privileges of fucking around and finding out.
That's right.
Whereas
And that's
people of color,
exactly what FAFO is. It's a privilege because
yeah,
there's no consequences, but there
no,
is now,
there is
you
now.
know. Um, the greatest failure the Democrats have ever had is forgetting how elitist they are.
Mm,
Democrats have no ability to connect with just a normal person.
yes,
Um, if you even look at how things are worded in
yes,
Democratic press releases, um, you know, you you can't just go visit a farm town. You
right.
know, you have to do more than that. I really was hoping Tim Walz would overcome that because he is just an average, normal guy
And
who
spoken.
is just very smart.
Yeah.
But it
I
was a
think.
failure of the party.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I have my gripes with the Democratic Party, even though I am a registered Democrat. One of the things that has gotten me upset with the Democratic Party There are many things. One of the things was that Joe Biden's biggest mistake was that he let the midterm results of his first term inflate his male ego, and he rescinded on being a one-term transitional president. Because had he not rescinded on his stance of being a one-term, restoring us back to our societal norms, our democratic norms, then he could have positioned Vice President Harris or any other Democratic leader who may have risen up to the primary process to have more time to get the messaging right. And if you look at what Vice President Kamala Harris was able to do in 3 months, was not only remarkable and showed how skilled and experienced she actually is, but I don't think anyone else could have done what she did. It
Black
was the
women are magic
epitome.
is real.
I was gonna say black woman magic. I mean, it was the epitome of black girl magic, black woman magic. It was the epitome of her merit and her skills. She was one of the most experienced candidates for U.S. president out of all the last few elections combined of people. She had level at the local government level, the state government level, and the federal level. Right? She has worked in various branches of government. And yet somehow she was a DEI hire. Somehow she wasn't equipped. I'll never understand that concept. Um, and when we talk about merit, right, when we think about what affirmative action has done for white women, now what's going to happen if they're just basing things on merit, right? Because it wasn't just that they were just basing on people's identities. Those folks still had to have qualifications met, right? And that's often why they were one of the few people in those roles. And then when they get there, we're not supported properly, right? So I had applied for a senior manager position to lead a vertical of a department at the organization I told you I quit after 3 months. I was a finalist where it was me and a white woman. And the chief marketing and development officer at the time uh, was growing her two verticals in the communications and marketing side. And every new hire or every department head, for the most part, that she had was a white person. And the selection committee had really pushed for me because they said, we need someone with diversity. He has a breadth of experience in higher education, storytelling, communications and marketing, DEI. Like, he's a strong candidate. And she calls me and says, we really like you, but the other candidate has more supervision experience, and this person is going to be supervising an associate level employee. And I said, okay, I get that. We want to bring you in as a manager, right? Meanwhile, there was no formal job description really clearly fleshed out for me. She was so busy that she didn't really properly onboard me. And literally the Friday before the first day I was supposed to start working at that job, Sarah, I get a LinkedIn alert saying, you should apply for this job. And it was the same exact job that I already had gone through multiple rounds of interviews for. So then I email her, like, hey, is this a glitch? Is this a mistake? She immediately calls me and she says, I am so sorry. The person we originally offered the role to at the last minute declined the role. But we still don't, she says, but we still don't think you're ready. So we're reopening the search. A slap to my face, right? And I wish I can tell you that that was the most disrespectful part of the experience, but it gets worse. So then she reopens the search process, and the finalist at the second time around was a woman of color. And when I looked at this woman of color's resume and I talked to this candidate, her supervision experience was comparable to mine, if not less than. And then when she turned it down because she got hired to work at a campaign, a statewide campaign, they insisted on reopening the search again. And that's when I lost my mind. I was like, what the hell is going on? And so I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm challenging these folks. And when I tell you this white woman got so flustered and pink in the face that she said things that she wasn't supposed to say, that made me realize that despite her creating a position for me, I was simply meant to be tokenized, and I was meant to be grateful for even being given an opportunity. And she said to me, "You were never going to get that position. You were never a finalist." Meanwhile, every communication she sent to me in the interview process was, "You are one of our finalists." She said, "We're concerned about your personal brand and how and your work around and how public you are about DEI and that you won't be able to represent our brand effectively because your brand is so big." Yeah, we know
So,
that this person doesn't have as much experience as you or is comparable to you in supervision, but we think she's ready. All the shit that you shouldn't say, right? And I had no choice but to quit. I was like, there is no way in hell I can work at an organization when they have blatantly told me you're not valued. Cray cray.
I mean,
The audacity.
white white people in power like that you're marginalized.
Yeah,
It's enjoyable for them. Why would they take a chance on someone that threatens their peace?
yeah.
Um, I remember this situation, and
Oh,
you know, you're the perfect DEI hire because you check six boxes. You know what I mean?
I am a unicorn.
It's true. It's true. I mean, and that's what we are. Tokenization. Um, it can put you in a place to really gain power and momentum.
Mhm.
But most of the time, it just adds an extra layer of marginalization when you realize you're not in the meetings you should have been in. You're not getting the voice and the publicity that you should be getting. Your ideas are getting stolen. That's a very common refrain for me.
Yeah.
There's a company in Denver right now using an idea that I had. I didn't get monetized for it. It was just something I came up with in an interview.
Mm.
So, um, it's easy to
Yeah.
marginalize people. It's not easy to apparently keep your mouth shut when somebody threatens you and you get all emotional about it and
Oh yes,
apparently
her
tell
wife
you
fragility.
everything.
Her wife fragility was bad. She was like livid. And when I tell you nothing brought me more satisfaction than when I sent my resignation email to all the executive leadership team and the founder and executive director of the organization and gave them key recommendations. And one of them was that they demote her as the chief development and marketing officer and hire a separate marketing officer who has more experience in that area. And then later they would do that and they would hire a woman of color. And that to me felt like poetic justice, right? But what baffles me is that this woman now it's been about 2 years. She has yet to think of like maybe I should formally apologize and maybe I should really take stock in what Mark said to me, right? And because she said things like, I'm democratic leaning, I'm a feminist, I'm progressive. That don't mean crap if you being progressive and democratic leaning and educated and a feminist means diluting your power in order to give this marginalized person a real influence because you're threatened by me. The fuck? Like it was wild to me. Anyways, switching gears because it's not about this conversation is not about that. But I want to talk a little bit about a more personal thing with you, which you and I have talked about personally. Because I've had many conversations about body image, fatness, and I say fatness because I know that's not a dirty word, right? And I think that a lot of times people take the word fat and fatness and we turn into this weird, nasty, disgusting thing, and the toll of fat phobia and body shaming. And you share that a lot with me as a personal friend, but I'm going to ask you to share that in this setting right now. Can you share how navigating your life while having to deal with a society that puts you down simply because of your size? Like, how do you deal with that? How do you navigate that as a person who is, to use your framing, a fat person?
Yeah. I think first we need to put a number to the damage. A fat person like myself at my age has 59% less wealth than a straight sized person my age. Fat people tend to retire with at least 70% less money. And we work more hours because we have something to prove, right? Typically on a weekly basis, a fat woman will work 5.9 more hours than a straight sized woman. Over the course of your life, that's a whole extra job. Um, those numbers truly, truly matter. There's another sort of statistic borne by several studies that the actual damage to a fat person, the reason there are so many comorbidities, isn't because of the fatness necessarily. It is because of the social stress.
Yeah.
The social stress of walking around in a body like mine. Chairs never fit. There are many experiences I can't do. If you want to exclude me from a meeting, it's easy enough. Just have a walking meeting, right? The exclusion and the commentary. I go to the grocery store and I will literally have strangers look in my cart and say, that comes in a fat-free version. Or my sister-in-law lost 150 pounds on such and such a diet plan. And I'm like, not to put too fine a point on it, bitch, I've lost over 1,000 pounds in my life.
Yeah.
Willpower is not the freaking problem.
Yeah.
The problem is all the other things. There are over 400 factors that lead to fatness, and it's incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And a diet and exercise plan is less than 2% effective in most people.
Yeah.
Even bariatric surgery is pretty effective. So, what it's like to live in a body like mine, I understand that I have to work harder, fight harder every day. I have to risk being looked at as bossy, loud, strident, because I have to stand up for myself all the time.
Yeah.
I have to be hyper vigilant that my ideas and my professionalism aren't being taken away from me. That's just a few of the things. I work in an office right now where, without being asked, another office worker took the arms off my chair so it would be comfortable. That's the first time ever in my career I haven't had to ask to just be comfortable in a place.
Mm.
And the whole narrative comes around because fat people, it's their fault that they're fat, right? There is a sense that if you didn't lack something, you wouldn't be fat, whether
Right.
it's willpower or character or knowledge or whatever. And that is
Well,
not the
and I
case.
think that is not the case. And I think, we're also not talking about the fact that many people in this country live in food deserts, that people can afford healthier things because the cost is humongous. We're not talking about the fact that many single parents have to work multiple jobs, and sometimes it's just easier to feed the children fast food or it's more affordable,
And
right?
then you eat it too.
And then you eat it too, right? Because you're on the go, because you're eating on
Yeah.
your way to your second job or third job sometimes, and you also live in a place where you don't have access to a lot of affordable, healthier food options, right? And then the organic food industry has become this elitist, like, well, only for those who can really afford it, and that's why let's wear our yoga pants and like let's have our avocado toast. Meanwhile, the cost of avocado is skyrocketing. Meanwhile, the cost of eggs are skyrocketing, and don't even get me started on all the crap that they put on our foods, right? Like I went to Europe for the first time last summer, and I was like, this soda tastes a little different. And my British friend said, well, it's because we put less sugar in our soda products than you do. And I was like, oh, but it still tastes good, but it's not that big of a difference. But I was like, wow, why can't we do that? Because it still tastes good. Why does it have to have so much more sugar in it? Because sugar becomes an addiction,
Right.
right? And
That was
then,
always the real threat. It was never fat. It was
right,
always sugar.
yeah, yeah,
But
and
sugar also changes your brain,
yes,
and it makes it you are much more pliable as a person because you're addicted to sugar.
right,
It's easier to sell you a product because of that.
yeah,
To your point about food deserts, the more marginalized you are, the less access you have to good food.
Hmm.
It really does truly cost more to buy the ingredients for a salad than it does to go to McDonald's.
Yeah. And as a single person who doesn't have children, I'm very, very lucky in that regard. I spend on average about $100 to $150 a week on groceries.
That's a lot.
And yeah, and it's because I'm cooking more, right? So I'm trying to save money. But because I'm trying to eat healthier, I'm not buying all the frozen foods or I'm not eating out as much, right? And so that's why it's costing me a little bit more because now I'm buying certain things to be healthier with, right? And it's like, when you think about the time it takes for me to cook and meal prep, right? And then run a business and then do all other things that I have to do, right? It's a lot sometimes. Like yesterday, I had no choice but to order out because I was so exhausted after working like 10 plus hours yesterday that I was like, there's no way in hell I'm cooking. There's just no way in hell, right?
Yeah.
And as a dancer, as a choreographer, I mean, a lot of my body dysmorphia stuff started the very first time I had a public dance performance. I was maybe 16 years old. This was my first time performing in public. It was at my mentor's first arts festival in my hometown of Paterson, New Jersey. And this older white man comes up to me. Don't never met him a day in my life. And he says, you did pretty good, but you would be better if you lost some weight. Mind you, he had no idea that I'm disabled, that I have cerebral palsy. He has no idea how much it took for me to even to get ready for that performance, emotionally, physically, right? He had no idea how much I had to fight to even have the right to dance, to be a choreographer. And you did pretty good, but you would do better if you lost some weight. And from that point forward, that was where my body dysmorphia and my body image issues started. It wasn't because of, I didn't live in a food desert. I didn't necessarily, I saw different types, big body types all the time. But it wasn't until this random stranger had the audacity to come up to me after my first public performance and say that to me that I started to internalize what my body looked like. And I had to make a choice, Sarah. I was like, do I start these psychiatric medications to help my mental health and risk gaining weight? Or do I stay off medication and stay skinny? Well, guess what? I chose sanity over vanity in this case. And I'm not a twink anymore. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay. It wasn't okay for my ex-boyfriend, but F him. You know what I'm saying? I don't need him anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't need him to be my lover if he can't love me in all of my sizes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the people forget the power and the impact of people's words. That comment that you said that comes in fat-free version. I wish someone would have told me that. Man, they would have saw a very different side of me. The hoops would have came off, right?
I I mean, I took the devil off my shoulder because what I wanted to say was unkind, but um, you
Let's,
know,
the
our
South.
bodies are for public commentary
That's
because
wild.
we lack character, and that's why our bodies look like this. If you swapped it, and you said, it takes a huge amount of perseverance and character to exist and thrive in a fat body, people would admire at least that. Um,
Yeah.
there are starting to be some fitness people who are like, look, you can be healthy in a larger body. I don't have any heart problems, none of that stuff. And I feel like the need to tell people that, right? Like, yeah, I'm fat, but I don't have all that stuff. Mm.
Meanwhile, I know people who are smaller than you who do. It's like,
Well, yeah, because most of that stuff is truly genetic.
yes,
And I don't have it. I'm genetically blessed. So, you
amen.
know, it's incredibly complex.
Yeah.
But imagine if you're fat and black and disabled. I mean, you can probably imagine that. Duh. Um, you know, where are you? Where are you in the food chain
Well,
of
that's why,
capitalism?
I had Dr. John Paul on a couple weeks ago, and there
Yes, I
the
saw
author.
that.
Oh, you saw that? Okay. If you haven't watched that episode, is I believe it is episode 4 of, I think, yeah, episodes 4 or 5. I just released a new episode today, so I can't remember the order right now. But anyway, the point I'm making is that I think he was episode 5. He's the they're the author of the forthcoming book Black Fat Femme, right? And when I tell you, first of all, Sarah, I need you to read that book. Audiobook is coming out, so I'm going to get the audiobook. Um, I when I tell you I cried reading that manuscript within the first 20 pages, I cried like maybe every 3 or 4 pages. It was just it took my breath away. And that's why I titled that conversation um being someone the world hates and loving yourself anyways.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the point, right? If you are marginalized, if you are multi marginalized, you are loving yourself in spite of.
Yeah.
It's the physical representation of people saying you have such a pretty face, but you
Mm.
know, and I'm saying no, I'm pretty great. I'm very intelligent and I look great and I deserve to thrive and
You are great and you don't just look great, you are great. Like be very clear, right? Like and here's the thing. And I know that I have a level of pretty privilege, right? When we talk about like in some demographics I am more desirable than others. Um and I recognize that. I know that for me, I've met trans women who have come up to me and asked me if I'm on estrogen or hormones, or if I have any surgery, and I say no. This is I was born this way, and they look me up and down, rolled their eyes, and walked away. Right. So I recognize in the ways in which genetically I have been privileged. Um, but I also recognize as a disabled person, right, that I can't walk more than 10 minutes without taking short breaks because my legs will swell because I will get
mm-hmm,
spasms. I can't work with a personal trainer anymore. I realized because as I've aged, I'm losing dexterity in my body, and so weight training was causing my chronic fatigue to flare up. So a 30-minute workout forced me to sleep for hours afterwards. That was interrupting my ability to work and function for the day.
yeah,
Right? I recognize that I have to explain my disability a lot more now because it's not visibly apparent to folks. They just think I have a gay walk. Right? Oh yeah, oh yeah, right? And so it's like, and now I have to like insist on certain parameters when clients hire me. If the location of the venue where I'm speaking or doing the workshop or facilitating anything in is more than a 10-minute walk, you must provide car service or reimburse me for ground transportation.
absolutely.
That is now a non negotiable, right? And it took me a long time to be able to name that because I always felt like, well, if I start making all these, you know, requirements, they're not going to want to work with me, right? And so you and I are navigating a world not designed with us in mind. And yet we still have to thrive because if we don't, then we're lazy or we're making
Right.
excuses, right?
Thriving is for me, success is for other people.
Yeah.
Um, I don't I don't think a lot about that anymore.
Mm,
I realized that probably my best role is to continually elevate the people around me, which is why I started the Speakers Institute. Um, I like that.
yeah.
You know, some days somebody will win a big award and mention my name, and that's good enough.
Yeah.
So, um,
Sarah, I have to ask you this last question. I asked every guest this, and
oh, okay.
I think I know the answer to this. But what do you hope to shift in society through your work?
Hope. Probably hope. Um, when nobody looks at you and sees who you really are, when nobody sees that you have greatness inside you, when nobody sees your unique genius, your potential, your brilliance, your beauty, you don't have hope.
Mm,
And I see it. So I want people to feel hopeful because I believe in my heart of hearts, everybody can thrive. And sometimes you just need that one person. You need that one person that really looks at you and is perceptive and says, look, I see you doing this and you're brilliant at it.
yeah. Well, Sarah, on that note, I see you. I see you doing this.
Thank you.
And you're brilliant. And you're kind. And you're self aware. And you are generous. And you speak people's names in rooms they're not in because you know you have the opportunity to be in that room. And I hope you know that my admiration for you runs deep. My appreciation for you runs deep. And that I will also continue to speak your name in rooms you're in and continue to uplift your story and will always be there for you. I always told you this. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, I can share this. I don't think you'll mind me sharing this. You had messaged me on LinkedIn, messaged something, and I said to you, I was like, Sarah, we're friends. You know, you can text me, right? I was like, you don't have to be so. And she's like, I know, but like, I was like, Sarah, stop. Like, you know what I'm saying? There are some people, like, I consider you a friend, right? Like, that is not. I have a lot of friends in my life and a lot of people I care about, and you're one of them. And so, you know what I'm saying? And so, I want you to know that I see you, that I love you, that I
I
appreciate
love
you.
you too. I'm just very
Um,
careful with how I treat people, and I know that people only have X amount of energy.
yeah.
So I'm
Well,
careful about how I communicate.
this is what I tell all my people across all my circles of influence and friends. Give me the opportunity to tell you I don't have the capacity at the moment. Can I call you back? Don't assume that I don't have the capacity just because you know because you see so much of what I'm doing externally, right? Because if I call you a friend, if you're a chosen family member, if you are a relative, if you're someone I deeply care about, I will muster the time and the energy and I will make shit happen. But I don't know to do that if the people I love and care about make the decision for me.
You are absolutely correct.
So what I
And I
advise
love you
people to do
too.
now, I love you too. And what I advise people to do now when they have that struggle with me is just ask me, hey Mark, do you have the capacity to talk to me right now or help me process this? Or hey, do you have the capacity to look over my resume or to make this introduction? And I'm always gonna be very honest with you. Because that's who I am. And if, I may tell you you have to wait, but I'll never tell you no. If I love you and care about you, the answer is never going to be no. The answer is I can't right now, but I will. Give me a couple of days. Remind me if I forget. Give me grace. I'll eventually call you back. I'll eventually text you back. Right? So,
Part of community care is advocating for yourself. And I acknowledge that and respect that in you. I
yeah,
mean, you have built a community around you.
yeah. And I'm lucky. I'm privileged. You know, my former California roommate said to me, who is from India originally, but she's been in boarding schools most of her life and she's lived in different countries. She said, "You know how lucky you are, Mark." She was like, "Most people have one or two really, really good friends. You have a whole fucking wall full." And the joke is that I have the people I admire wall of all the different people I've met in my real life who are friends and family and colleagues and people I admire. And she was like, you have people literally all over the world who will drop everything and be there for you because they so deeply believe in you and they love you. And that is a privilege of mine. And I never take that for granted. I never take
It's
that
one
for
of the things that has helped me be who I am now is that I have this group of ferocious friends around me. They are willing to go to bat
Yeah.
every time.
Yes.
Um, so the days that I don't believe in myself, I believe in my friends.
Mm.
And I understand that I respect them and that their belief in me is worth honoring.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Sarah. I want to remind folks that you can connect with Sarah on LinkedIn at Sarah Phelps. Sarah, how else can they connect with you, our audience?
Sarah Phelps Consulting, like the little thing underneath, at Gmail. I'm doing a lot of public speaking right now. I just did some lecturing at a college,
Nice.
mostly on the advocate cycle, the cycle of energy that it takes for an advocate to be healthy.
Mm,
So I'm doing a lot of work with that and sadly, a lot of work with burnout,
mm,
and ways to at least ameliorate it for now
yeah,
until conditions change.
yeah,
So I'm happy to talk to anybody about that.
yeah. Thank you, friend. Thank you for being here. Thank you for accepting my invite. I want to encourage y'all if you have an opportunity to have Sarah on your podcast or show that you do so. If you are a white woman who wants to learn how to be better at being an ally to marginalized communities, reach out to Sarah, buy her a cup of coffee, send her a gift card, hire her to help you be better. Thank you for the shift that you're creating. Thank you for your light and your love and your encouragement and all that you represent.
Thank you.
Thank you.